And so, for example, we do not believe that the President should sign the Bela bill into law tomorrow. Among other issues, we believe the bill compromises the rights of children to mother tongue education. And that's why I met the President on Bela yesterday, and I really hope that we can find a common way forward. But if the President does go ahead tomorrow and sign the Bela bill, we will have to consider all of our options on the way forward. In a multi-party government, leaders need to respect the constraints and imperatives of their partners. And any leader that tries to ride roughshod over their other partners will pay a price, because their time will come when the shoe is on the other foot, and they will need the understanding of those partners in turn. That is how coalitions work. But this also applies to NHI. And our first instinct is to find solutions to the aspects of the NHI plan that we believe will do lasting damage to South Africa and our ability to deliver healthcare to all. If we can find those solutions collaboratively, we will be delighted. If we can't, we will pursue the interests of South Africa and South Africans' people through every other legal means at our disposal. It is important that we find common ground on this matter, particularly given the fact that the common goal is surely universal access to basic health care for every South African, regardless of their income status. It's what we want, it's what many in the private sector want, and it's certainly what any patriotic South African would want. But does it have to come at the expense of the destruction of choice? Does it have to come at the expense of the destruction of the private medical sector in South Africa, which is world-leading in many aspects? Or can we also find a model like we're doing with Operation Vulindlela, like we're finding with rail, like we're finding in so many other aspects, where we can harness the partnership of the private sector to bolster and improve the public sector? And that's the compromise I believe we should be looking to find. We can spend the next 10 years slugging it out in the Constitutional Court, clause by clause on the NHI. Will that move us any closer to universal access to basic health care, improved hospitals, and a better quality of care for all South Africans at the access points that they access public health care? No, it won't. And so surely the shorter path to achieving what we all want is to find that compromise and to work together in partnership and in a collaborative way that ensures that we achieve the common objective that we all want. And I think it is important, particularly in this new environment that we find ourselves in, and the new era of coalition politics, that conflict over policy in a multi-party government like the GNU is normal and indeed is necessary in a democracy. It happens in coalitions the world over. It's not unique to South Africa, and it is a feature of coalitions, particularly in coalitions as large as the Government of National Unity is. And it is also, importantly, not an existential threat to the government. Let me say again, to be clear, conflict over policy in the GNU is not necessarily an existential threat to the government. But that doesn't mean that we would not walk away under any circumstances. I set out earlier in the speech that the bottom line for the DA is that the economy grows and it creates jobs. If the GNU cannot or won't do that, then there's frankly no point being part of it. Indeed, if the ANC insists on taking down the country down the path to economic ruin, it would be our patriotic duty to leave the government and to use our position in Parliament then, our 22%, to stop the slide into catastrophe. Similarly, if the ANC sought to compromise the Constitution, undermine the independence of key institutions like the Reserve Bank, or do away with private property rights, we will have no part in it. The DA can never in good conscience be party to any assault on the Constitution. And so, the DA will not crash the government unless the government is crashing the economy or trashing the Constitution. To summarize, first, we seek common ground. Next, we engage in constructive conflict towards finding compromise. Finally, we walk away where there is lasting damage being done to the economy or the Constitution. And I hope that is clear. Not every single dispute within the GNU needs to be met with headlines, GNU on the brink of failing, or GNU, will it last? There will be conflict. There will be differences of policy. There are 10 different parties with very different philosophies within the GNU, and expecting them to agree on absolutely everything all of the time is an unrealistic expectation. So we mustn't catastrophize conflicts that may occur within the GNU. Ladies and gentlemen, I now want to move to an explanation of the DA's approach to relations with the ANC inside the GNU. And I want to be very, very clear about something. With 22% of the vote, the DA cannot get everything it wants inside the government. It would be undemocratic if we were to do so. So I want our supporters, old and new, to understand and accept that that is how democracy works and that is how coalitions work. Having said that, we will equally not accept a position in which we get none of our priorities implemented, because frankly that too is undemocratic and that too is not how coalitions should work. The reality is, whatever way you slice and dice it, whatever way you want to cut the pie, the DA holds the balance of power in the government of national unity. Without the DA's support in Parliament, the GNU does not have a majority. So, fair is fair. We can't get it all our own way, but equally so, the ANC can't get it all their own way.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. We have sought to explain over and over what the government of national unity is really all about. It's about executing the mandate of South Africans. The South African people did not give a single party an outright majority to set up government on its own. So that having been done by South Africans, it required that we should all put our heads together and say, how do we take this country forward? And in doing so, the 10 parties got together and said, we should work together as the people of South Africa have determined and decided, and form a government of national unity, since no single party achieved a 50+1 majority on its own. So it requires that there should be a measure of cooperation. Statement of intent was then drafted, which I should say, having been drafted, a number of parties were then consulted. Nearly all parties were consulted that are represented in our parliament. In the end, 10 said very clearly, we subscribe to these principles that are set out in the statement of intent, and we are therefore committed and determined to work together collectively as the 10 parties. And those 10 parties having agreed to do so, I then had the opportunity, having been elected the president of the Republic by this parliament, to then pick or appoint a cabinet that is made up of the majority of those parties, and some are represented in our parliament. And those members of the executive, including those who are in our parliament, having signed to the statement of intent, have set out a clear program of where South Africa should go on the mandate of the people of South Africa. And of course, as I said earlier, we're all from different parties that have different manifestos, parties that have different or adhere to different ideologies. But what unites us is the statement of intent. And this statement of intent, having united us all, we also inserted the governance processes that will govern our relationship. In case there are any areas of difference or disputes. Last night when we met, we decided that in ensuring that we enhance good working relationships, we will have what we call a processing team, a team that will process whatever needs to be addressed by the leaders of all the political parties. So that processing team will identify those issues that we need to discuss and, say, resolve from time to time. And embedded in the statement of intent, of course, we did say, if there ever was an area of difference, and let me put it up front, that of course, because we come from different political parties, there will always be differences. As there are differences in any relationship, whether it's between friends, between partners in a marriage or in an organization, in a company, or even here in Parliament, all over. So there will always be people who see things differently. We therefore need to find ways of resolving those. Now, I don't work on the basis that, we are going to differ to a point of even parting ways. I've often worked on the basis of what Nelson Mandela taught us, that for every problem, there is a solution. And so you try to find the solution. And so we underpin our working together, and we confirmed this yesterday, that we will find solutions to whatever problems that may arise, because problems will arise, and we should never kid ourselves and think that we will not have challenges and problems. So we will find problems. So how will we take them? To arbitration or mediation? No, we will engage amongst ourselves. We will find each other. And of course, we've set up a system that has been tried and tested in solving problems, sufficient consensus. But for me, sufficient consensus means that we build consensus amongst all of us. So we build consensus, we convince one another, and find solutions for the problems that we may have. And that is the way that the government of national unity will proceed forward. So that is why I continue saying to our people, support this process that you, as the people of South Africa, decided we should have through the vote outcome that you landed us with. So we are here because the people of South Africa, through their votes, delivered this outcome, and we must make it work. So last night we said we're going to make this work, and we will, as we face challenges, find solutions, as you will see as time goes on. From tomorrow onwards, you'll find how we find solutions, or you'll see how we find solutions to continue with this government of national unity. Iyo ke le ndiyakuthemba ukuthi uvile. Xa ufuna ukuthi ndithethe ngesiXhosa ndizawuthetha ngaso ngenye imini. Ndiyabulela.